I have a few things I just want to share with you. I've made a few notes just to keep myself online. This has to do with the weather that you're seeing changing and a few other things. And I just believe that the world needs to hear what I've come to understand. First of all, the storms are getting more severe for a definite reason. It's not going to be permanent, but it is going to last a few more years. The consistency of them is going to show a little better how they are formed. The fact that they're happening almost on clockwork now is going to be a better way of understanding where maybe they start from and where they end up. And I'm referring mostly to your hurricanes and your earthquakes. There isn't a storm in this world that is not created by water. There is no natural disaster that does not have water as its cause. We will get to that. The epicenter for our world seems to be the Bermuda Triangle. That would be the equivalent of the red eye on Jupiter. But it's not the only thing that matters. As far as the hurricanes, there might be an opposing spot that I'm not sure of. At least as far as the Atlantic, it's that spot where everything seems to crisscross and come back together. However, on the Pacific, where the majority of earthquakes are found to occur, it's the subcurrents slamming into coasts. You're not thinking about the massive tides that are caused by a 10-10 kind of setup on the clock. As the sun goes and the moon follows, it's pulled the water up. Well, a second tide is being raised in. And when it releases, it causes a subcurrent, that big push down, and you forget about all the channels. And for some reason, they're not exactly smooth to where you can walk it up. There's a couple that jump backwards and go lower. Why, I couldn't tell you. I don't have a topographical map of the ocean bed to see. But they may have it, and they may be able to figure out and see exactly where it's coming from. But it should ribbon around the South Pole and come back up one way or another. Once it does, you get about a 3-day to 4-day or 5-day lag depending on where it hits. Australia gets about a 3-day lag, same with South America, but if you go all the way up to San Francisco, you're probably going to hit a 5-day lag. I don't know whether they rim to hit the Pacific or whether they rebound. I think they rebound early before it gets to landfall, and they take a drastic course separate, or it mislines and goes farther north earlier and then hits them from the Indian Ocean. That was another one I had thought of, but it does seem to run from the Pacific Orient back around the Antarctic loop across Australia in one way or another, and then back up into the side of South America, Mexico, or California primarily. Though there are occurrences now, and the other one that you must be aware of is the fact that on the East Coast, and I don't know why nobody's ever really thought about this one, is every bay that is naturally created is a place where you're going to have a washout, and during this next 7 years or so, you can actually have major earthquakes in New York, in Washington, D.C., and Florida is going to have a really hard trouble. We'll get to that because the washout is in the Gulf. That is where the soil has been ripped by the storms and washed back out to sea. Think about that and it'll make sense. And of course, you're going to need to check all this because we're getting into this is easy stuff. This is not the tough stuff. Another thing that is showing up, or will show up, is the fact that the pressure of the water is receding. During this period, the pull of the galaxy is as strong or greater than the pull of our sun. And the water is being taken and moved in an odd direction, so that right now I believe the nights are more normal than the days, and the days we're seeing a wash. But that's because of the position where we are. Eventually you'll start seeing it in the mornings and evenings, and then at some point you'll see it during the daytime. And I might be wrong about the nighttime, but it's on a clock. As we move around a certain time, we're going to be aimed a certain way. You can see how it can adjust and make differences. But the galaxy, the dark rift, is kind of a dead space where the attraction to the center is equal all the way through. And so the water is going to dissipate eventually, and we're seeing signs of it right now. Well, actually, back up, is with the water pressure, that's the reason for the increased volcanic activity. It's not being held as tight, and it's allowed to churn up, and fractures occur to where it can release the pressure. But if you have not noticed, there has been a couple of occurrences I have witnessed where the sun has a rainbow around it. The reason being is the water's leaving. We're evaporating faster and faster, and that is also the reason that you're seeing more and more effect from the sun. But you're thinking of the sun improperly, because it is not gas. It is not explosive. There are pops, but you'll come to find out that it's radioactive metals. The densest, heaviest materials stay in the sun. Everything else burns back off and gets shot right all the way out to the end. Starts over and cycles back in. That's the Egyptian and the Daniel statue. The Daniel statue is beautiful because of the clay and the iron, the metals, the soils, and then the waters. The waters are not part of us. They are, well, we'll get it. We're getting into scripture, but you'll see what I'm saying. It reforms at the edge, just like the Sombrero Galaxy, which is blowing apart, will come to a balance and then work itself back together. I think I hit a couple of good notes down here, so I've got that. Another thing to consider is the sun is in motion. We are always in motion with it. It is the greatest attraction, so that when all these minerals and particles and everything are all blasted back off of the sun, like a kiln, I guess that's what it is, where you're refining your metals and you're getting all the scam off, that's impurities, getting all the impurities out. That's what the sun is, but it's radioactive metals otherwise. Mercury will eventually light. I believe the moon was the star for Christ that they were talking about. At that time, the moon lit up, and the men in the east thought it was a sign that when the sun would go down, there was a star that followed the sun and followed over. But like I said, we're going to try to avoid scripture somewhat. I'll do that later. The thing is that when Mercury lights, you're also going to have an increase of particulate matter, which will increase the heat here. The heat, however, is caused by fire in the sky. All those little baby particles are raking through the system. We run through them and bombard into them constantly. That's why you have about a 2-hour pre-dawn light, because we're raking into these particles. It creates a false dim light. Then when we turn into the direct light of the sun, it increases, and we also get the light itself, which is actually electricity. The only power in this universe is electricity. Our understanding of it is extremely limited. But there is only one power, and that is one truth from the Bible you must understand. In fire, it is dispersing the electric out of the bond it has been charged to hold. In light, it bounces, or sunlight, it bounces off of the little particles, bounces off of something else and reflects in. That electricity is about the equivalent of a laser on a CD player. You see the distance, you see the color, and it's all because of that electricity bounces, shoots in, just like a laser would with its particular resonance or signature. The heat is the particulate matter, but the light is the electricity. Same with thunderstorms. You're seeing the path of travel. It goes from one fusing to the next fusing as it moves along back into the ground, and it tries to bind itself always. The greatest source of binding is magnetics, which would be then the center of the galaxy as opposed to the radioactive metals in our suns. There'll be a core of, or primarily your majority of your magnetics, and probably magnetic metals we do not have here, are gathered in the center. They gather the waters. Water is, with salt especially, attracted to a magnet. Bet you didn't know that one. And that is also gravity as well. The water in our atmosphere is pressure down on us. We are primarily water. We are attracted to the center. But at the same time, those metals are also attracted slightly to the radioactive, because when they come together, they fuse.